This beautiful young woman is a professional mechanic with extensive experience repairing heavy machinery. Today, she has been invited to inspect and repair an excavator that is experiencing a serious problem. Without wasting any time, she gets straight to work as soon as she arrives. After carefully examining the machine, she begins checking each component to find out why the excavator is not operating properly. I notice that she quickly focuses on the hydraulic system and starts disconnecting several hydraulic oil lines. It appears that there may be a problem with the oil pump or the hydraulic system, so everything needs to be inspected carefully. While removing the hydraulic lines, she works very carefully. As soon as a hydraulic hose is disconnected, she uses a clean piece of cloth to gently cover the open end of the hose. This may seem like a very simple trick, but it is actually extremely useful. Covering the open hose helps prevent hydraulic oil from leaking out, reducing waste, and keeping the work area cleaner. More importantly, it prevents dust, dirt, and other contaminants from entering the hydraulic lines. Keeping the hydraulic system clean is very important because even tiny particles of dirt can damage internal components and affect the machine's performance. It is clear that this young mechanic is not only skilled at repairing machinery, but also extremely careful with every step of the process. She pays close attention to even the smallest details to reduce unnecessary risks during the repair. After removing the necessary hydraulic lines, she continues inspecting the system to determine the exact cause of the problem. There may be an even more serious issue hidden inside the machine that still needs to be discovered. Could the hydraulic oil pump really be the source of the problem, or is the actual cause somewhere else? Let's keep watching to see how this beautiful mechanic finds the fault and brings this excavator back to working condition. After disconnecting the hydraulic oil lines, the young mechanic continues her work by removing all the bolts, securing the oil pump assembly to the excavator. This is a job that requires patience and care, as the components have been working for a long time and may be covered in oil, grease, and dirt, making them difficult to remove. Finally, after a lot of effort, all the bolts have been removed. However, an even more difficult challenge now appears. The oil pump assembly has been completely released from its mounting points, but in order to inspect and repair it, she needs to remove it from the excavator. Looking at the size and weight of this component, it is obvious that it cannot simply be lifted by hand. For one person, especially a young woman, trying to lift such a heavy component alone would be extremely difficult and could also be dangerous if not done properly. Instead of trying to rely on physical strength, she chooses a much smarter solution. In situations like this, when strength is not enough, experience and creativity become the most important tools. She decides to use a chain hoist to help lift the oil pump. First, she finds a strong and secure point to attach the hoist. Then, she carefully connects the oil pump to the chain and checks all the connection points to make sure everything is properly secured before lifting. Little by little, she pulls the chain to raise the heavy component. Because of its considerable weight, the process is relatively slow. However, with the chain hoist, she does not need to use much physical strength and can still carefully control the movement of the heavy component. This method may take quite a bit of time, but under the circumstances, it is probably the safest and most practical solution. Most importantly, she can remove the oil pump without putting herself at unnecessary risk or causing further damage to the machine. After patiently working for some time, the oil pump is finally lifted out of its original position. Now she can carefully inspect every part to find out what is actually causing the excavator's hydraulic system to malfunction. So, what exactly has gone wrong inside this oil pump? Will she be able to repair it and get the excavator working again? Let's keep watching and find out. After removing the oil pump assembly from its position, the mechanic continues inspecting the interior. This is a particularly complex area because underneath it lies an entire gear system with multiple gears working together. These gears play an important role in transmitting power inside the oil pump assembly. After operating for a long time, they have accumulated a considerable amount of grease, dirt, and other debris. Therefore, before she can properly inspect each component, she needs to clean everything thoroughly so that any damage can be clearly identified. She begins by carefully removing the gears and taking them out for cleaning. The components that can be removed are placed into a container filled with a specialized cleaning solution. Soaking the gears in the solution helps loosen and remove layers of grease and dirt that have built up over a long period of time. After allowing them to soak for a while, she takes each component out and cleans it more carefully. The layers of grease and dirt gradually disappear, revealing the clean metal surface underneath. This is a very important step because only after the components have been thoroughly cleaned can she accurately inspect them for signs of wear, scratches, or damage. However, not every component can be removed or soaked in the cleaning solution. For parts that remain attached to the machine, she uses a cloth soaked with cleaning oil to wipe the surfaces directly. Although this method is simple, it can be surprisingly effective, especially when dealing with small and hard-to-reach areas where ordinary cleaning tools cannot easily reach. Working directly on the machine also makes the job much more difficult. The space around the components is very tight, limiting her ability to move and work comfortably. She has to constantly adjust her position and find the best way to reach each individual area. Despite these difficulties, she remains patient and carefully completes each step. Every gear and even the smallest component is thoroughly cleaned before moving on to the inspection and repair stage. It is clear that this kind of work requires more than just physical strength. It also demands patience, experience, precision, and the ability to work effectively in confined spaces. Once all the components have been cleaned, she will be able to inspect the gear system much more carefully and determine whether any parts are damaged. So, are these gears still in good working condition, or are there signs of serious damage hidden beneath all that dirt and grease? Let's continue watching and find out what she discovers. After thoroughly cleaning all the components, the mechanic is ready to begin the next stage, putting everything back into its original position. The gears and other internal parts are now much cleaner, allowing her to clearly inspect each component before reassembly. However, this stage requires a great deal of concentration. While disassembling the unit may seem relatively straightforward, putting everything back together can be much more complicated. During disassembly, she simply needs to remove the bolts one by one and take out each component. But during reassembly, every part must be installed in exactly the correct order. There is an interesting principle involved here. The component that was removed last is usually the first one to be installed during reassembly. On the other hand, the parts that were removed first are generally installed last. This means she must remember the exact position and sequence of every single component. Inside this assembly is a complete gear system made up of multiple gears working together as one mechanism. Each gear has its own specific position and must mesh perfectly with the surrounding gears. Even if just one gear is installed in the wrong position or orientation, the components that follow may no longer fit properly. This is why reassembly requires so much experience and precision. The mechanic needs to know not only where each component belongs, but also how all of the parts connect and work together. Before securing each gear, she carefully checks its position to make sure everything is correctly aligned. From what I can see, the reassembly process appears to be considerably more difficult than the disassembly. When taking the machine apart, she only needs to loosen and remove the bolts, and the components can gradually be taken out. But when putting everything back together, every part must follow the correct sequence. There is no room for rushing or skipping a step. If even one component is installed incorrectly, the next parts may not fit into place. Worse still, forcing the components together could damage the gears, cause the mechanism to jam, or create serious problems when the machine is started again. That is why she never tries to rush the process. Every time she places a gear into position, she carefully checks its alignment and movement before moving on to the next component. Although this method takes more time, it greatly reduces the risk of mistakes during reassembly. One by one, the gears are returned to their original positions. Even the smallest components are carefully installed exactly where they belong. After a long period of patient work, the entire gear system gradually takes shape again, with all the gears properly connected into one complete assembly. Finally, the reassembly is finished. She performs another careful inspection of the entire system, making sure that no components have been left out and that every part is correctly positioned. However, this is still not the final step of the repair. After completing the reassembly, she still needs to reinstall the oil pump assembly onto the excavator, reconnect the hydraulic lines, and inspect the entire system before attempting to start the machine. After all these complicated repair steps, will the excavator finally be able to operate normally again? Let's continue watching to see what the final result will be. Finally, we have reached the last stages of repairing this excavator. After spending a great deal of time inspecting, disassembling, cleaning, and carefully reassembling every component, the mechanic is now completing the final steps to bring the machine back to normal working condition. First, she carefully checks the entire system and tightens all the bolts one by one. Every connection is handled with great attention to detail to make sure the components are securely fastened and meet the required technical specifications. This may seem like a simple step, but it is extremely important because even a single loose bolt could cause vibration, leaks, or safety problems during operation. After tightening all the bolts, she moves on to reconnecting the hydraulic oil lines. Each hose is carefully returned to its original position before being checked and secured. These lines are responsible for delivering hydraulic oil to the machine's important components, so every connection must be properly sealed to prevent leaks during operation. Looking at the excavator gradually coming back together, you can really feel the excitement. In just a few more steps, we may finally witness the moment we have all been waiting for: the excavator starting up and operating again after being out of service. In my opinion, repairing machinery is one of the jobs that brings tremendous value to our lives and communities. Mechanics do much more than simply repair broken vehicles or machines. Their work helps keep many other activities and services running smoothly. Thanks to experienced mechanics like her, machinery that breaks down can be repaired and returned to work instead of remaining idle for a long time. Construction projects can continue, transportation vehicles can stay on the road, and many important jobs can move forward without unnecessary delays. And now, everything is ready. The only thing left is to start the engine and see whether the excavator can return to operation. After everything she has done, will this excavator finally start and work smoothly again? Let's wait for this exciting final moment and find out. Thank you all for spending your time with us and following this entire repair journey. We truly appreciate your support and companionship. Wishing you all happiness, good health, and many wonderful moments in life. See you again in the next video.